Now in Spain, large groups of wild boar are now a common sight. Authorities in Spain, they now are proven to be a threat to humans.
The Italian city is now attracting wild boar sightings down residential streets have become common in northern Rome. Right now, across Europe, an invasion is underway. Millions of wild boars are storming through cities, destroying crops worth hundreds of millions of dollars, causing deadly car accidents. Crash on the H3 freeway. A man says he hit a wild boar in the middle of the road. It happened at night earlier this week, and threatening an industry worth nearly $9 billion. For decades, governments tried everything to stop them. Hunting, fences, even military intervention. Nothing worked. Instead, these intelligent, adaptable creatures kept multiplying, advancing into more territory. But then, something changed. Scientists, farmers, and wildlife experts across the continent began testing unconventional strategies that nobody expected to succeed. Some of these methods are so bizarre, they sound like fiction. And yet, against all odds, several are actually working. Could the tide be turning? Let's find out as we uncover the story of Europe's war against wild boars. The enemy at the gate. Zoologist Andrea Monaco walked silently through the presidential estate of Castel Porziano near Rome, a protected area harboring Italy's oldest wild boar population. His target, a family of boars caught in an unusual trap that had just arrived from the United States. The device was called a pig brig. Unlike traditional metal traps, this one was lightweight, portable, and anchored to the ground like a tent. It could catch up to 60 wild boars at once. When Monaco approached, 8 bristly piglets and their 100-pound mother tried desperately to escape through the soft net, only to bounce back to the center each time. This moment represented a turning point in Europe's approach to wild boar management. For decades, European wildlife experts relied on traditional hunting methods that proved increasingly ineffective. Now they were importing innovative technologies from across the Atlantic, desperate for any advantage in this losing battle against the wild boar. So how are these creatures wreaking such havoc across Europe? Wild boars are among the most resilient, intelligent, and destructive animals on the planet. They weigh up to 300 pounds, possess razor-sharp tusks, and can run at speeds of 30 miles per hour. But their most dangerous weapon is their mind. These animals are incredibly adaptable. They thrive in forests, farmlands, mountains, and increasingly in the middle of major cities. They eat almost anything: roots, crops, garbage, small animals, and even bird eggs. And they reproduce at a staggering rate. Here is a number that should terrify you. Wild boar populations can grow by up to 150% every single year. That means a population of 100 boars can become 250 in just 12 months. Multiply that across an entire continent, and you understand the scale of the problem. In Italy alone, the wild boar population exploded from roughly 500,000 in 2010 to over 1 million a decade later. Some estimates now place the number at 2.3 million and climbing rapidly. Spain faces a similar crisis. Now in Spain, large groups of wild boar are now a common sight. Authorities in Spain, they now are proving to be a threat to humans, with its population doubling in 20 years to approximately 1 million animals. Poland, Germany, Hungary, and nearly every other European nation report the same alarming trend. The consequences are devastating. Italian farmers lose up to $22 million every year to crop destruction. Wild boars cause at least 2,000 car accidents annually in Italy, many of them fatal. A farmer named Marco Massera in Geneva described the devastation perfectly. "A boar does not eat," he said, "it destroys. With its muzzle, it pulls up entire plants. Once a boar enters a field, whatever it touches is completely destroyed." But the damage extends far beyond agriculture. Wild boars now roam freely through major European capitals. Rome, Berlin, Barcelona, Warsaw, and Budapest all report frequent sightings. In Rome, a viral video showed two mother boars calmly nursing their piglets in the middle of a busy street, completely unbothered by passing cars and pedestrians. This boldness signals a fundamental shift. These animals have lost their fear of humans entirely, and there is something else, something that transformed this crisis from serious to existential. A virus emerged that threatened to destroy an entire industry, and suddenly, Europe had no choice but to fight back with everything it had. The invisible killer. In early 2022, Italian authorities made a chilling discovery. A wild boar tested positive for African swine fever. That single result sent shockwaves across Europe and triggered emergency measures at the highest levels of government. African swine fever, commonly known as ASF, is a viral disease that affects pigs and wild boars. For humans, it poses zero health risk. You cannot catch it from eating pork or touching infected animals. But for pigs, it is absolutely catastrophic. The mortality rate approaches 100%. There is no cure, there is no vaccine, and there is no treatment. Once ASF enters a domestic pig farm, the entire herd must be destroyed and disposed of. The economic implications are staggering. Italy's pork industry generates approximately $8 per farm, $8 billion in annual sales, and employs roughly 50,000 people, with products like prosciutto and cured sausage being central to Italian cuisine and culture. If ASF spreads unchecked, the entire industry could collapse. In 2018, China experienced a devastating ASF outbreak. Farmers were forced to kill hundreds of millions of pigs to contain the virus. The economic losses were unprecedented. In Europe, the virus first appeared in the European Union in 2014, primarily affecting Baltic countries and Poland. Since then, it has spread to Germany, Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, and several other nations. By mid-2025, Germany alone reported over 2,200 infected wild boar carcasses across multiple states. What makes ASF particularly dangerous is how it spreads. Wild boars transmit the virus through direct contact, but the pathogen also survives for months in infected carcasses. This means that a dead boar lying in a forest becomes a biological time bomb capable of infecting any animal that encounters it. You might be thinking, but how do these wild boars affect domestic pigs? Well, there is a strong connection between the two that creates a terrifying trap zone. Wild boars and domestic pigs are the same species, Suscroa. So any pathogen that infects one can spread to the other without barriers. Outdoor pig farms, backyard holdings, and extensive production systems face constant risk of infection through direct or indirect contact. European farmers watched the situation deteriorate with growing alarm. Traditional control methods were failing, and the boar population kept growing despite centuries of hunting tradition. Something radical had to change. Faced with this impending threat, scientists in laboratories, farms, and wildlife reserves across the continent began developing solutions that nobody had tried before. The pig brig, the American import. The pig brig works by exploiting wild boar behavior. Researchers place bait inside the circular enclosure and wait. Boars are intelligent and naturally suspicious, but their hunger eventually overcomes their caution. Once inside, the net closes, trapping entire family groups simultaneously. Even the largest of boars are unable to penetrate that net. And more importantly, we've designed our trap cap. This matters enormously because of how wild boar populations work. Traditional hunting typically targets large male boars, leaving females and juveniles to continue breeding. Hunters pursuing the prized big tuskers inadvertently scatter family groups, causing smaller females to begin their reproductive cycle earlier. The population barely decreases and sometimes actually increases despite heavy hunting. The trap strategy flips this dynamic. By capturing entire family units, especially reproductive females, wildlife managers can actually reduce population growth rates. Germany adopted this approach with impressive results. In Brandenburg, authorities deployed hundreds of American-style traps specifically to combat ASF. Officials reported that both wild boar damage and camera sightings decreased significantly in trap zone areas. But trapping alone cannot solve the problem. Wild boars are too numerous and too widespread for any single method to succeed. European authorities needed additional strategies that worked alongside trapping, creating layers of defense against the boar invasion. Some of these strategies required building physical barriers across vast landscapes. Others demanded a complete rethinking of how cities manage their relationship with wildlife. And one particularly creative solution came from a surprising source, a scientist studying boars in the hills of Israel, who discovered something that changed everything. Walls against the wild. When German authorities detected ASF near the Polish border in 2020, they responded with a strategy borrowed from medieval warfare. They built fences, lots of fences. Miles and miles of fencing were designed to contain the virus by restricting wild boar movement. The approach might seem primitive, but the science behind it is sound. ASF spreads slowly through wild boar populations because boars are territorial and do not naturally migrate long distances. By erecting physical barriers around infected areas, authorities can prevent diseased animals from reaching healthy populations and protect domestic pig farms from contact with wild carriers. Germany constructed both mobile and permanent fencing systems. Core zones with the highest infection levels received complete fencing with a 3-kilometer radius. Larger buffer zones extended 20 to 25 kilometers further out. Within these restricted areas, officials implemented strict protocols, intensive carcass searches, mandatory reporting of any found dead boars, and temporary hunting bans to avoid scattering infected animals. The strategy required enormous coordination between veterinary services, wildlife authorities, forestry departments, and local governments. Every boar found dead within the zones required immediate sampling, recovery by trained personnel, and safe disposal. Movement restrictions applied not just to animals, but to objects that might carry the virus. Vehicles, clothing, hunting equipment, even soil on boots. 2 countries demonstrated that this intensive approach could actually eliminate ASF. The Czech Republic detected its first infected wild boar in June 2017, using aggressive fencing, systematic carcass removal, and controlled population reduction. Czech authorities declared the country ASF-free by April 2018, just 10 months later. This was an incredible result and made other European countries pay attention. Belgium achieved similar success. After detecting ASF and wild boars in September 2018, authorities implemented strict containment measures, including hunting bans in the infected area, intensive surveillance, and strategic fencing. By March 2020, Belgium had eradicated the virus entirely. These victories prove that ASF can be defeated when authorities act quickly, coordinate effectively, and apply comprehensive measures. But both the Czech Republic and Belgium benefited from favorable circumstances. Their outbreaks were focal introductions into limited geographic areas more than 300 kilometers from other infected regions. For countries dealing with widespread infection across large territories, the challenge is far more complex. Fencing thousands of kilometers of border would be prohibitively expensive and practically impossible. Different approaches are needed for different situations, and some of the most promising approaches involve not building barriers, but changing the environment itself. The pool experiment. In the hills of northern Israel, a scientist named Uri Shas was wrestling with a familiar problem. Wild boars had invaded the city of Kiryat Tivon, rummaging through garbage, damaging gardens, and occasionally confronting residents. Traditional solutions like hunting faced legal restrictions and public opposition. Something different was needed. Shas, a biologist at the University of Haifa, began studying why boars entered cities in the first place. His research revealed a critical insight. Much of their urban behavior was driven by basic biological needs that natural environments no longer satisfied. Wild boars love to wallow in mud. It helps them cool off in hot weather and removes parasites from their skin. They also dig in soft soil to find food. When natural wallowing sites and foraging areas become scarce due to development or drought, boars venture into urban areas seeking alternatives. Shaunas designed a remarkably simple experiment. He set up wading pools in natural areas along the routes boars typically used to enter Kiryat Tivon. These pools provided everything boars needed: water for cooling, mud for wallowing, and space for their natural behaviors. The results exceeded expectations. Camera traps showed boars using the pools extensively, splashing around, playing in the mud, and having fun. More importantly, their excursions into the urban areas of Kiryat Tivon decreased significantly. This approach represented a philosophical shift in wildlife management. Instead of trying to kill or capture boars, Shas essentially gave them a better alternative. Why risk entering a city when everything you need is available safely in the nearby forest? The experiment operated under one critical condition: no boar culling during the study period. Shaunas argued that shooting wild boars does not actually solve the problem, and in many cases increases reproduction. Research has shown that hunting pressure can trigger compensatory responses in boar populations, including earlier breeding and larger litters. His findings sparked intense interest across Europe. The concept of environmental modification as a management tool offered new possibilities for urban areas where traditional hunting was impractical or unpopular. Instead of fighting boars directly, cities could potentially redirect them by improving natural habitats outside urban boundaries. Of course, installing wading pools cannot solve a continent-wide crisis, but the research illuminated a crucial principle that would inform other innovative approaches. Understanding boar behavior creates opportunities for manipulation, and nowhere is that principle more important than in the very cities where boars have established permanent populations. Urban battlegrounds. Berlin has become famous for many things: its history, its nightlife, its cultural scene, and increasingly its wild boars. The German capital hosts one of Europe's largest urban boar populations, with animals roaming through parks, gardens, and residential neighborhoods as if they own the place. One particular boar earned internationally celebrity status in 2020. Dubbed Elsa by German media, she stole a laptop bag from a nudist at Tafulka Lake and was chased across the beach by the naked victim in a scene captured on video that went viral worldwide. 3 years later, a wild boar mistaken for a lion sparked a large-scale police search in southwest Berlin. Police near Berlin have called off an intense 2-day search for what they thought was a female lion on the loose. Turns out, it was more of a wild pig chase. These incidents might seem amusing, but they reflect a serious challenge. Urban wild boar populations have established permanent residence in European cities, and they are not leaving. Research conducted in Berlin and Barcelona revealed that urban boars form genetically distinct populations from their rural cousins. They have adapted to city life, creating self-sustaining communities that no longer depend on immigration from surrounding forests. Spanish wildlife expert Carme Rossell explained why cities became so attractive. Boars have access to gigantic pantry. She said, Our farm fields and organic urban waste provide unlimited food. Nothing has been effective at curbing their population growth. They have no predators. Their natural habitat, the forest, is expanding. Winters are less cold. And critically, they have lost their fear of human beings. Cities across Europe are testing various responses. Rome installed boar-proof garbage containers and placed protective nets around trash bins. Barcelona deployed specialized teams using cage traps, drop nets, and selective hunting methods during night operations. Budapest analyzed vegetation patterns to identify which urban green spaces attract boars, hoping to modify habitats and make them less hospitable. Spanish researchers developed a particularly sophisticated approach. They created guidelines for municipalities that include making garbage cans boar-resistant, securing outdoor cat feeders that boars often raid, and populating urban green areas with plant species that boars like. The challenge is immense. Traditional direct control through hunting is difficult or impossible in densely populated areas. Safety concerns, public opposition, and legal restrictions all limit what authorities can do and the methods they can implement to prevent this havoc. Even when culling is permitted, the methods that work in rural areas often fail in cities where boars have become so comfortable they barely react to human presence. But scientists are developing a solution that could change everything. One that targets the very biology that makes boars such successful invaders. The contraception revolution. Giovanna Massey had a radical idea. Instead of killing wild boars, why not simply stop them from reproducing? A senior research fellow at the University of York, Massey had spent years studying wildlife population control. Now, she was leading a pioneering program to give wild boars oral contraception. The concept is straightforward. Female boars are remarkably fertile, capable of producing multiple litters with numerous piglets each year. If you can prevent females from becoming pregnant, the population will naturally decline over time without requiring anyone to fire a single shot. Previous attempts at fertility control involved capturing female boars and manually injecting them with contraceptive drugs. This approach worked, but proved impractical at scale. Capturing, sedating, and injecting thousands of animals requires enormous effort and resources. Effects wear off after a few years, requiring repeated treatments. Oral contraception could change the equation entirely. If researchers can develop a bait that delivers contraceptive drugs when eaten, they could potentially treat large portions of the female population with far less effort. Mass's team is developing something called the Boars, which stands for Boar-Operated System. This ingenious device hides contraceptive bait inside a container that only wild boars can access. The mechanism exploits the unique physical characteristics of boar snouts, ensuring that other animals, like deer, foxes, or domestic dogs, cannot accidentally consume the drugs. The pilot program is currently underway in Italy, led by the Latium and Tuscanini Institute for Animal Health. Researchers are testing both the contraceptive formulations and the species-specific delivery systems. If successful, the technology could be deployed across Europe. Mass emphasized why this approach has become necessary. The population of wild boar is growing incredibly quickly worldwide. She explained, this is largely due to declining numbers of hunters. Traditional hunting cannot keep pace with boar reproduction rates. So, we are forced to find new solutions to control their numbers. The stakes are high. Unchecked boar populations mean ever more damage to nature, to agriculture, and escalating human conflicts in busy urban areas. But fertility control faces its own challenges, including regulatory approval, public acceptance, and ensuring that contraceptive-laden bait does not affect non-target species. Even as scientists pursue this biological solution, authorities on the ground cannot wait. They need strategies that work right now, using existing tools and resources. And in 2024, Italy made a decision so dramatic, it made headlines around the world. The army deploys. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni had seen enough. The wild boar crisis threatened the nation's beloved pork industry, disrupted daily life in cities across Italy, and showed no signs of improving, despite decades of conventional management. In May 2024, she signed an extraordinary order. 177 soldiers would deploy to help combat the boar invasion. The goal was audacious: reduce the wild boar population by up to 80% over 5 years. Military personnel would support existing control efforts, adding manpower and coordination capabilities that civilian agencies lacked. The decision reflected both the severity of the crisis and the government's determination to act decisively. The announcement generated immediate controversy. Environmental organizations questioned whether military deployment was the appropriate response. Stefano Riondi, director of biodiversity at Italian nonprofit, strongly criticized the approach. The military is not the solution. He said they want to seem strong and very decisive, but the only consequence will be to create a sense of insecurity and war in the city. Rimondi pointed out an underlying problem that bullets cannot solve. Wild boars forage through trash piles because of poor waste management at the city level. Deploying soldiers does not address the fundamental attractants that draw boars into human spaces. Food industry insiders, however, supported the government's action. Several countries had previously suspended Italian pork imports due to ASF concerns. Any further spread of the disease could devastate exports and threaten livelihoods across the sector. From their perspective, aggressive population reduction was essential protection for an 8.8 billion industry. The Italian military deployment represented the most dramatic government response to the wild boar crisis to date. But it also highlighted a fundamental tension in wildlife management: the conflict between lethal control methods that some view as necessary and growing public sentiment favoring non-lethal alternatives. This tension plays out across Europe. Hunters and farmers generally support expanded culling efforts. Animal welfare advocates push for fertility control, habitat modification, and coexistence strategies. Scientists argue that no single approach will succeed, that effective management requires combining multiple methods tailored to specific local conditions. What everyone agrees on is that doing nothing is not an option. The wild boar population continues to grow. The damage continues to mount and the threat of disease continues to loom. But amid all the challenges, genuine progress towards a solution is being made. Countries are learning from each other, sharing knowledge, and developing integrated strategies that actually reduce conflicts. Lessons from victory. Amid the grim statistics and ongoing struggles, 2 success stories offer genuine hope. The Czech Republic and Belgium both eliminated African swine fever from their wild boar populations using comprehensive, coordinated strategies that other nations are now studying intensively. The Czech approach was particularly instructive. When ASF appeared in June 2017, authorities moved with exceptional speed. They immediately established a fenced core zone around the detection site and implemented a hunting ban within the infected area. This might seem counterintuitive, but the logic was sound. Hunting scatters animals and can spread the virus beyond containment zones. Instead, authorities focused on intensive carcass searches using trained dogs. Every dead boar found underwent mandatory sampling. Positive carcasses were carefully removed and disposed of to eliminate them as infection sources. Camera traps monitored boar movements throughout the affected region. Population density estimates guided management decisions. Once infection levels decreased, authorities gradually introduced controlled culling, carefully targeting animals within defined zones while maintaining strict biosecurity protocols. The entire operation required seamless coordination between veterinary services, wildlife managers, forestry departments, and local governments. By April 2018, just 10 months after the first detection, the Czech Republic was declared ASF-free. Belgium achieved similar results, eliminating the virus within 6 months of its September 2018 detection. These victories demonstrate that wild boar challenges, even serious disease outbreaks, can be overcome with the right combination of rapid response, scientific monitoring, physical containment, and strategic population management. The key is integration. No single method works alone, but combining multiple approaches creates synergistic effects that individual strategies cannot achieve. European wildlife managers are now applying these lessons across different contexts. Urban areas require different tools than rural landscapes. Disease outbreaks demand different responses than routine population management. High-density agricultural regions need different protections than protected natural areas. Research continues on all fronts. Scientists refine trap designs and deployment strategies. Contraceptive technologies advance through clinical trials. Urban planners incorporate wildlife management into city design. Farmers strengthen biosecurity measures. Hunters adapt their practices based on a new understanding of boar population dynamics. The wild boar problem will not disappear tomorrow. These intelligent, adaptable animals will continue to challenge human communities across Europe for the foreseeable future. But the days of helpless watching are over. Europe has developed an arsenal of creative solutions, proven strategies, and accumulated knowledge that is making a real difference. The boar wars continue, but the tide may finally be turning. Have you ever encountered wild boars in your region? Share your experience in the comments below. Hit that like button to support our channel and subscribe for more captivating stories about nature.